as a segue from the international business to what you're doing in the public pay business in the U.S., talk a little bit about the relationship that you put together with, I think it was Beijing Lamai and the school in Michigan, so that they've, which I think is a model for some of the things that you're likely to be doing in the future, and is really value added for kids in the U.S. and kids outside the U.S.
Maybe let me just talk for a second about the evolution of our customer focus, and then specifically talk about what you brought up there, David. So when I joined, our primary focus was private pay. And what private pay means, that's consumer families around the world, but primarily in the United States, heavily concentrated in Maryland, but genuinely global business, in which people pay us directly, consumers, families pay us directly, above and beyond whatever they pay in taxes or anything like that. This is a completely private transaction. What represents the future for us are schools, and schools both domestically and internationally. Domestically, there's the fastest growing segment within the K-12 marketplace is virtual schools and blended schools. Virtual schools driven by online learning. And fundamentally, it's about learning outside the home with the assistance of teachers from the school. But importantly, it's part of the school, so you're not paying for it as a family. That is growing dramatically. And the segment of that that's growing particularly dramatically in recent years is the K-8 segment, which is our fundamental core strength. So we're very focused on that domestically, selling to school districts and charter schools in that sector. That's one. And then we also sell to international schools, primarily led by our high school, but we also sell K through 8. Those schools are typically international schools attended by locals from that country who find our American diploma an attractive differentiator to help them get into United States University.
So in some ways in the U.S., what you're facilitating is the promise that all public schools should have access to online courses. There's no reason why any public high school shouldn't have access to Mandarin or advanced science, and they can do that with Calvert. And they can do that with a kid taking Calvert in the walls of a physical classroom or at home.
I often travel to visit customers. Yesterday I visited a prospect in Duncansville, Pennsylvania, okay? Duncansville, Pennsylvania, well, where is that? Well, guess what? That's in the middle of Pennsylvania, and there is very little around it. They do have 178 students. That's not nothing. They have 178 students, and that's from the entire state of Pennsylvania. And also, to your point, it's like their teachers can teach so much, but it's only a school. Can we help them by providing teachers in subjects that you could never justify in a Duncansville, Pennsylvania? And that's a big part of what we do, and it's a big part of the virtual promise of online learning. Of the promise of online learning, and that is a big idea. I mean, that is a big idea. People criticize, online learning, and this, there's ground that needs to be made up in terms of delivering the same kind of results via that mode of education as opposed to brick and mortar. There is ground to be made up. But man, the promise is enormous, and we feel like, even though we're not the biggest player, we feel like, why not us to lead the way? Why not us? And we've just created a new curriculum and platform that we should probably talk about, but I feel like we're really well suited to lead the way.
Yeah, you've created a new curriculum in the elementary school and middle school that are that's getting rave reviews.
We have created the first learning experience specifically designed for virtual and blended schools. There are curriculum and platform that are used in those environments, but they're not designed for those environments.
And talk about, just I hate to interrupt you, but what's the difference between a virtual and a blended school?
The term blended means a combination of online and physical instruction. So oftentimes the line between a virtual school, or how one identifies oneself as a virtual school, and a blended school is blurry. It's a spectrum. So, but a pure virtual school would be a pure online learning environment.
Where the kid never sets foot in a public school building.
Whatever school building, right. So, and that's not atypical, because your school building may be hundreds of miles away, right? So, but then there are other environments where the school building is not hundreds of miles away. Or maybe the online learning component deals with, you know, may emanate from far away, but there might be learning centers nearby. That is typically what I call a blended school. Then there's blended learning that happens in traditional schools, and that's another way to think about it. And there are more people who try to do that, although I think that's something that we might be able to participate in as well. So it's a changing landscape, and you know, as kids' needs change, as families' needs change, this is a really good answer for a lot of people, and it can really provide opportunities that you could never have in a physical school. You have to think about it differently, and that's what we're about. You know, we have designed a learning experience for virtual that takes advantage of the fact that you're not in a classroom. What can you do not in a classroom that you can never do in a classroom that enhances learning?
And that can be advanced learning. We talk a little bit about advanced language and advanced math, but I think what you at Calvert did pro bono for Green Street Academy in the credit recovery area. You know, so many kids in our public schools are over age for the class that they're in, and they need to catch up. And the combination of that plus summer learning loss, kids learning, you know, forgetting what they learned the year before, but specifically to the credit recovery, Calvert's online capabilities have allowed kids in public schools to get the classes that they need to move on to the next grade and to actually graduate on time, which is a really profoundly important trend.
Right. So at Green Street, we did we're doing a really good program that helps kids who are really fighting hard to make it work, and helping them catch up, and it's gratifying on multiple levels. I would also say, David, that the same thing could and should apply even more in elementary school levels too. So for example, we have a product called Vertice. Vertice helps people who are struggling readers read better, and it's proven, and it's good. It needs to be updated, but you know, I'm thinking that really probably should be updated, and because so many kids, the reality of it is, if you address the kids in 3rd grade, you don't need credit recovery in 11th grade. So, you know, and is that an opportunity for us to help schools and families? I think it is. So, and that's also we're also using that liberally in our international market. So, there's a number of different ways that we help schools and families.